We already have
Who
bumper
wrote the music?
We
Who
don't
wrote
need
the
you.
music? Who wrote that bumper music? Was that me? I don't think it was me.
I don't think it was you.
I don't
either.
think it was me. I'm not all that good at music. I'm not a musicarian. Yeah. Josh!
Hi,
Top
Gary.
of the evening to you. Funny seeing you here.
Nice glasses.
Thanks, man. I took my motorcycle over. It was such a beautiful day. I
You can
love
take
being
the
out.
motorcycle glasses off now, though.
Well, then I couldn't see my wonderful guest,
Oh,
Lynn.
you forgot your regular glasses.
I didn't bring my because it's a pain to bring two sets of glasses. Lynne Blankenbeker is our guest tonight, who I had the wonderful honor of serving in the New Hampshire legislature, who has served our country, served the people of New York on it's not the USS Comfort. What is the initials?
USNS.
Why is the NS? Why isn't you? Because it actually looks like a Swedish vessel, but
Well, that's just because it's white with a big red
right,
cross.
right. I
It's
know.
not no, so we have, the USS vessels are United States ships, and then we have the naval ships, which are ours. Are the USNS Comfort is sailed by the MSC. So it's an organization. They're non-military that sail our ship, and then our hospital is the hospital aboard the ship. If that makes any sense. So even
That
though the
makes
ship
no
is a
sense
hospital,
whatsoever, but I'm
the
glad you
military is the
understand.
hospital. So we have two skippers, the commanding officer of the actual hospital facility. So it's actually a medical treatment facility aboard the ship.
So
and then we have the skipper of the ship
he
who
or
drives
she
it.
has absolute power over what goes on in that medical unit,
Correct.
and the captain or whatever of the ship
The
tells it
MSC.
where it will and where it will not
They
go and
sail
how it gets there.
Correct. Yes. So they
Okay.
sail it. Yes.
But why not USS? Because my great grandfather sailed on the USS Constitution,
Oh, really?
and if it was good enough for him, darn it.
Well,
battleships
the
and-
USS is typically reserved for warships.
Oh,
And then you've got the USNS ships, which are naval vessels, but they're the Military Sealift Command, which is a civilian force made up of a mixture of full-time civilians and former
military.
Navy.
Surface warfare officers usually.
Right. So what you'll find is that the captain of a Military Sealift Command ship is most likely a former naval officer, but
So
is in a civilian role at this point.
Is it part of it to distinguish them so that the enemies don't fire on like
well,
hospital ships and stuff like that?
Somewhat, but the Military Sealift Command is manned a lot by civilian folks. You don't actually have to join the Navy to join the MSC,
Okay.
the Merchant Marine and whatnot. And it's a civilian force that can be contracted, and those ships aren't just the hospital ships, the Comfort and the
Mercy.
but it's also resupply ships. So wherever you see underway replenishment of an aircraft carrier, where you see a smaller cargo ship pull up next to it with all the wires and stuff going back and forth, that's a Military Sealift Command ship. It's directed there, hired there, sent there by the Navy, but its crew
it's
is not
subcontracted.
necessarily military.
Okay.
Right. There may be a lot of ex-military on there, but they're not military.
Okay. So that was
Anyway,
pretty.
that's probably
pretty,
a little bit
that
more
was
explanation of
way more
MSC than you were looking
information.
for. But the
So-
ship, the designation USS versus USNS it draws that line between the two. You've
So
got
still both United States.
right.
Oh, yes.
Still
yes.
You're still American, right?
Yes.
You're
yes.
still yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Just checking. Just checking, Lynn. With all the crap going on in the news today, I don't know what to believe anymore.
Well,
For cripe's sake. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to say and get off my tiny little chest is that it really bothers me. So, and this is best to my understanding, I could be totally wrong, but basically what I've seen, what seems to me that has happened in New Hampshire is the Republican State Committee is supposed to stay out of everything, okay? The only thing they do is add support for people running like you, for running for office. They're there to facilitate things, to arrange things, to help out, to be there for their candidates, but they're not supposed to pick sides. So enter into the picture Corey Lewandowski, who has the ear of President Trump. And Corey Lewandowski decided that New Hampshire would be better off with Corky, what is his name?
Messner.
Corky Messner. And therefore edged out General Bulldog. And that just kind of aggravates the heck. I was going to say a bad word. I really was.
I said
know
a bad
that's
word
hard
on
to
the
believe.
air
I know you
last
did.
week.
I know.
Oh, it just
and
came out.
you-
I was
I
passionate.
docked your pay for that. But it just bothers me because I'm sure, Lewandowski has his opinion. That's terrific, and he should have advocated for one or the other if he wanted to do that. But the idea that basically the Republican Party with Lewandowski has decided that the citizens of New Hampshire are not smart enough to decide for themselves who to vote for. They've decided for you to go with Corky Messner, okay? And I don't really know Mr. Messner. I've met him. That's about it. I've met Don Boldock a lot, and I think he's a wonderful human being. And the stuff he does for the vets and things like that, he's been walking the walk way before Mr. Messner got on the scene.
So did something happen? Are you bringing this up simply because you don't like the idea that Corky is being pushed by the committee,
The
as
state,
opposed
by
to
the state, instead of letting the people decide who.
Right. So
And the guy's got tons of money. He doesn't need the party to
he
be
can
pushing
still
him
lose
up.
to Don in the primary, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So
Yes, but the thing is, just it's not reasonable to put your fingers on the scales before the voters have voted.
Right. I got
It is inappropriate, and I know stuff like that happens. I mean, you can see that. The thing is that's what happens in the Democrat Party. I don't like seeing it here. If you look at what happened to Sanders, same thing happened. The party decided they did not want Sanders, so they did whatever they could this election period and the one 4 years ago to make sure he did not get elected.
Well, maybe
period.
they have another plan for Bernie Sanders. Maybe they want him somewhere else, and so they needed to get him out of the race. I don't know.
He should be working with Putin, but I'm just saying, regardless, I would never vote for Bernie Sanders. I don't care, but that party chose their candidate. Okay, they didn't really let the people choose their candidate. They forced somebody with Clinton. They forced her through the process and rigged the system against anybody else that they didn't want. I think you can see it with Tulsi Gabbard, right? Tulsi Gabbard was pushed off the stage almost immediately. She had lots of following. She still has signs up in Ware, New Hampshire.
Really?
People love Tulsi Gabbard, and she got delegates and still wasn't even allowed on the stage at the Democratic convention. So on a state level, I don't like that crap happening in New Hampshire also.
Well, it
is
didn't
not-
happen in the second district.
No, it didn't happen in the second district. No, that seems to be the only one that they kind of left alone, which I am very grateful for. And anyway,
But
Lynn, I love you. What did you come here for? Why are you here tonight?
Well, you invited me. And
yeah,
I
that's
never
right.
turned down an opportunity to talk on rock, paper, hand grenades.
So how's it going? How's the campaign
It's
going?
going great. We have a great field team, and the volunteers are working so hard. I really have to give a shout out to Jimmy, who is my campaign manager. He is working overtime. I mean, just working so hard, making sure that we have volunteers who are making phone calls. We have a very lofty goal, and Jimmy makes sure we make that goal every week, and of contacting voters by telephone. He's been organizing our volunteers and getting them out to knock on doors and get voter contact that way. My schedule is busy all day long. He
Yeah,
keeps me
I bet
very
it is,
busy
yeah.
filling it in with things that we can do to meet voters. We're out there meeting people. There's a lot of excitement in CD2. Folks are ready. Gary, It wasn't until last week. I do every week I do a town hall on my Facebook page.
Yeah.
And last week, Representative Michael Waltz, who is the only Green Beret or the first Green Beret to ever get into Congress, he's a freshman congressman, but he has endorsed our campaign. And so he came on last week with me, and we were talking about so many issues and why Michael wants me to come to Congress to help him, whether it's health care. There's only 13 people bipartisan in Congress right now that have any health care experience, and they're trying to work on health care reform for this nation, which is huge. The people of New Hampshire want health care reform. They're looking for affordable, accessible, quality care, especially in light of this COVID crisis. And so Michael talked about that in my healthcare background, but then he said, we need a woman there, Lynn. We're mostly male. The Republican Party in Congress is about 95% male. The Republican caucus in Congress, but the Democrats are 66% male. And so when women issues come up, say, for example, abortion, the Democrat women, stand there in front of the Republican men and say, "Get out of my uterus," and they have they don't have any women to fight back.
Right.
And so he said, we have female issues that we
shouldn't
need.
fly, right?
But it does.
If a bunch of white people can advocate for Black Lives Matter, then a bunch of men can advocate for women's issues.
But there are so many women's issues. But that's how the Democrats run, right? That's how and they say, just get out of the way, and you don't understand, and you're not a woman, and you don't know what it's like, and So anyway. So Michael was saying how important it is that we get some more Republican women, and when I'm elected, I will be the first Republican woman elected in the state of New Hampshire to Congress.
Well, that'd be really cool. See, I can't say it's not a variable, but the reason I want you in Congress is because of the healthcare, military, and legal experience.
Well, and we've been running on that all the time.
Those are the primary ones.
But see, that's one of those things. Gary was almost just about said it. I'm going to say it. We don't look at you as male or female. We look at you as a candidate.
I would go that far. I'm not brain dead.
But the point is, we're not
Nobody's
advocating
you
for you based on your gender.
But I think it is important
another
today.
party that does that on a regular basis.
But I will have to tell you this. This is what yesterday was Women's Equality Day,
Yep.
and it's been 100 years since August 1919, that, right? 1920, that women got the right to vote under the 19th Amendment. And so this is huge for us. When you think about women, we've only had the right to vote in this country for 100 years. And think about what those women did, those suffragettes who had to literally peacefully protest, which we know peacefully protesting does get your voice heard, right? But they peacefully protest to get their right to vote. And as when my mom was in World War II, she was a nurse in World War II, and my mom couldn't continue to serve in the Army because my mother got married and had children. And when I was a little girl, my mother would kind of grumble under her breath while she was making our school lunches. She would say, I could be a colonel right now. And in 2013, when I was standing in the Pentagon and my daughter pinned my Eagles, which is Navy captain, but the equivalent of an Army colonel, on my collar, I was a mother, I was a wife, and I made it. I made what was an impossibility for my mother. Now think about that. That was my mother.
It's not that long ago.
It's not that long ago. It was
Right.
an impossibility to achieve what I was finally able to achieve for her. So yes, women do need to have a strong voice. I'm not saying that we're downtrodden and but we have to continue to be that role model. We have to continue to be that strong leader in our state and in our nation that continues to open doors for women. And so that's what I hope people see in me. I hope people see in me that the United States is the land of opportunity for everybody, including women. And look at the opportunity I got that my mother didn't have. And when I sat over in Afghanistan and those women had no opportunity, it makes you very grateful for what we have here. I got to go to college. I got to serve in the military. I got to achieve what my mother couldn't achieve. I got to go to law school. I get to run for Congress.
Right.
But it's, and so it's not my gender, but it is an opportunity that I think we do need to highlight. And women can be leaders.
Right.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I guess what I was saying was you were saying that you're going to be the first woman Republican, for Congress from New Hampshire.
right.
And although it is a milestone, it's not one of those things that I look at, right?
And I don't think we're not.
Right.
We certainly haven't made it a platform issue. I never even thought about it until last week.
Right, but those things that that they try to highlight, especially on the other side, where Kamala is the first African American VP candidate. I think those milestones based on gender and race, I think they're a little stretched. And I think most conservatives think that way too, because we don't look at candidates that way. That's
No, I
not
would
what
hope
we're
that
looking
people
at.
see me
Yeah,
for
exactly.
the opportunities that I've been
It
able to
doesn't take
accomplish.
away from those things. It's just one of those things that well, that's a nice to have, but it's not a credential.
Oh,
as
sure.
others are. You
Sure.
know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, policy. So, what is your stance, and why do you support the Second Amendment? Because right now there's a lot. I think some liberals are actually finally coming to the realization that being able to protect yourself in your own home might be a good idea.
Well, we found that all over the district. And folks have been asking me, how am I going to recover those 37,000 votes we lost in 2018? And I traveled all the way from Coos County down to, the Massachusetts border, from Canada to Massachusetts. I've traveled this district, and I've been in every gun shop, and they have no inventory. And when I asked them why, where did it all go? Some of it's a manufacturing backlog, but most of it is the guns just flew out of the store. Democrats, Republicans, independents, you name it. When they started this whole defund the police movement, and folks really felt for the first time ever in this country that we were going to have to become our own first responders, people started buying guns. And so the Second Amendment is very important. I've worn a uniform for 34 years to protect our Constitution. And part of our Constitution is the Second Amendment. I am a life member of the NRA. I feel very strongly about, not encroaching on people's rights or infringing, as the Constitution says,
Right.
On our right to keep and bear arms. And now more than ever, with this, like I said, this defund the police movement, we have got to become more, more aware that we may become our own first responders.
Well, maybe this is an eye opener for those folks that have, I've always said that liberalism is a mental disorder, right? Because there's a simple, logical order of things that they just cannot bring themselves to understand. And part of that logical order, one of those things, is the government, relying on big government to save you, to help you, to do all of these things, expecting big government to baby you from cradle to grave, right? And this little thing where they said, okay, let's defund the police because they don't like that piece of government. And so we have defund the police, and all of a sudden we've got some folks who saw that logical succession. Wait a minute. If the government's not going to protect me,
Who will?
I'm the only one who can protect myself. And the only way I can do that is because I have this thing called the Second Amendment that belongs to me.
That's not true. You can put up a sign in front of your house.
Oh, with
that says gun-free
a big
zone,
cross, yeah,
right? And nobody
yeah.
will.
No.
You're good.
But it's
Put it in
actually
your front
heartening.
yard too, because that always helps.
It's actually
Wait.
heartening to see that some folks are starting to understand that logic now. That logic that we've always understood.
Sure. So you mentioned signs, and I have to tell you, Gary, I watched your YouTube video, your Facebook post on your sign stealing deterrent device.
Yes.
That was brilliant.
Thank you.
That was brilliant,
I am
and-
a genius, by
Yes,
the way.
you-
I have to tell my wife because she won't believe me. But
So I hope you haven't taken off any fingers. of
No, I haven't
others.
lost-
Not your own, others.
yeah,
as
I don't
those,
care about that. But
But yes, I saw that, and I should have hired you to protect my signs because for some reason there's some little sign thief out there that just wants to rip up all my signs and take them away. So, we need to put your device on all my signs.
There was, by the way, the viewers should know that it is absolutely illegal to remove signs unless they're on your own property.
Yep.
Okay, so not Lynn, because it wouldn't be Lynn, but let's say Corky Messner puts a sign on my front lawn. I have every right to take it, pick it up, put it out back the house and use it for targets. Because they make great target stands. Those corrugated plastic ones.
Yeah.
They are wonderful because you can stick them on, shoot them a bunch of times. Anyway, that is legal. But if you are driving by and you see somebody picking up one of Lynn's signs or anybody's signs, Democrat or Republican, and messing with them, take pictures. Take a picture of their license plate and turn them in, because it is a crime.
Okay, except for I have to give a caveat here.
Okay.
Don't take my picture and don't do my license plate, because whenever I stop to correct one of my own signs, every sign that's laying down, I pick up and put back up.
Right,
So
I do that
try
too a
to
lot.
help people. So if you see me with somebody else's sign in my hands, a Corky sign, a Bolduc sign, anybody's sign, I'm just writing what's, making sure. And part of that is because I think we all should have a fair shake, and I would hope somebody would do that for me too. But the other piece of that is they blow away, they become traffic hazards, and you don't want a sign blowing across the street or whatever. And so I try to at least set them up straight and get them back on the ground. So
Right,
please
yeah,
don't take my picture.
That's different than taking them and
Yeah, no,
picking
I
them
don't.
up and throwing them in your trunk.
I don't do that. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so if you see that out there, take pictures and let's do something
Absolutely.
about it. 'Cause it's like Lynn said, it should be a fair, an even playing field, and let the voters decide, not criminals decide.
No.
So, see, one of the reasons I'm asking about the Second Amendment is, and I've said this on the show a couple times, is a while ago I went out to visit my friend Lee Quant, who you know.
Yes.
Okay.
Honestly.
And I'm on my motorcycle, and I start heading back to Manchester, and I always leave for Manchester around dusk. And if you ever head west on 101 at nighttime at dusk, the sun's like burning holes in your retinas, And so I said, I'm not doing that. So I decided to take back roads, and I screwed up. And so I'm taking this road, and I think it's going to lead to another road to head over towards Manchester. And I look up, and there's a sign that says 495 next exit, which means I am on my motorcycle with a gun in my pocket, no helmet, in Massachusetts.
Bad.
I'm a bad person, okay? So functionally, by a slight mistake, I could have been, the helmet, obviously they can pull me over, that's probable cause. So they pulled me over for that. They check, find I have a gun. I'm looking at a year in jail for just because I screwed up and misunderstood a sign. I took a wrong road. So I'm looking at a year in jail, and if I get off of that, I still am convicted of a felony and lose my right to bear arms just because I took a wrong turn.
So one of the pieces of legislation that I do think we're long overdue for is, universal carry or national reciprocity, where you're able to carry your guns across state lines. So, and I think the president has, when we talked last time, when we talked about my time on the Comfort, one of the things that the president did was broke down those barriers so that my nursing license in New Hampshire was good in New York City right away. So I didn't have to get relicensed in the state of New York, which is a bureaucratic process and could take months to do. And so, unless you're a compact state, but still, it takes some time. And rather than, preventing somebody from getting to point of care. So we're talking about licenses across state lines now.
Correct.
We're talking about a license that requires you to take an exam and show competency and credentialing for, which is a nursing or a physician's license. And so you can already take your car across state lines using your New Hampshire driver's license. Now you can take medical licenses across state lines, at least in the time of public health crisis. So here's a good next step. As a lawyer, we analogize and we distinguish all the time, but now it's time to start analogizing to some of those good policies. And so I will definitely go to Congress and try to champion with that bill has already been sponsored. I think it's called the Hudson Bill, and so I will definitely stand strong for
It's
that.
dead in Congress right now because the Democrats
Right,
aren't
Did they
in
vote-
control.
did
Most
they
of those are
vote?
dead, right?
But,
You're gonna
well,
have
we
to
can
start
resurrect
over.
those or start over, right?
Right.
And so, but we've got to get Republicans in Congress who are going to start voting for it. You know, when we have a majority and we don't have Nancy Pelosi as third in line, think about that to presidency. I mean,
Would you
she's-
please not say that on the air?
Well,
That's really just
So when we
That's
when
frightening.
we are not looking at
it's hate speech, really, Lynn.
so anyway,
Yeah.
so that's guns.
Yeah. So reciprocity. Yeah, because it is. I think the most telling one was that a couple in, I think it was Louisiana, where a mob of people came onto private property. It was a gated community.
They didn't just come on. They broke the gate.
They
I
broke
don't
the
understand why that particular AG thought that they could charge these homeowners for something.
Well,
when
tell them
these
what
people-
happened first.
This mob was walking through the neighborhood in a protest, right? And I call it a mob, not a protest. And the McCloskeys have a gate at the end of their driveway, a locked iron gate. And this mob broke through that gate onto their property. Never mind the community itself was a gated community, but they broke through the gate. They destroyed property in order to enter property. And it was in their driveway that this conflict took place. That's what I don't understand.
See,
why
there-
they were
so-
even charged in the first
so
place.
they
Now, I
ca-
know the state attorney general has made it right,
Yes, it's right.
but
now.
they're going to be feeling the impact for this for a while. But the idea is, this is not just a peaceful mob just walking down the street getting guns pointed at them. This is a mob that broke through a gate onto private property
Well, that's when it
and
starts
did not
becoming-
need to be there.
That's when it goes from being a peaceful protest to an illegal riot, right? Anytime that you know, first of all, crashing through a gate on private property is now vandalism and trespassing. Those are both crimes, and so those folks need to be punished to the fullest extent of the law.
But I think they called the cops, didn't they? And the cops
Yep.
said, "Hey,
Yep, exactly.
You're on your own."
Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Nicole Jones of CBS, she says that destroying private property is not a violent act
Okay.
because property can be replaced, and as long as it can be replaced, it's not
not
considered
violent.
violent.
oh,
Yeah.
so a business that somebody
Yeah,
worked
she's-
their butt off
She's
their
Looney
entire
Tunes.
lives."
I'm
and it
guessing that if someone
burned
started to
down.
burn her house down, that she would think that was violent. But
Yeah, it's only when it's
what do
her
I
house.
know, Nicole Jones?
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I think that couple was, I think, instrumental to selling a lot of guns.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they called the cops and they got crickets.
Yeah.
And so they said, okay, well, we're on our own. And they weren't going to let the house that they had, I mean, you know, sure, they're super rich, but so what? They work for it too, you know?
Right. Well,
If they-
nobody
people
should
want
be on your
the-
property. Whether you live in a tiny home, what are those new homes called? Micro homes,
Oh, yeah,
tiny
right.
homes, or whether you live in a mansion, you should be able to protect. I mean, that's what I love about the New Hampshire Constitution and our Second Amendment, where you have this right to protect your property. I mean, it goes farther than the U.S. Constitution, where
Right.
our New Hampshire Constitution literally says you can protect yourself and your property.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you know that pistol that Miss McCloskey was holding wasn't even operable?
Really?
Really?
Yeah, so they're both lawyers, and this pistol had been rendered inoperable by disassembling and removing the firing pin
firing
and
pin.
jamming something else in there. And so the pistol wasn't operable because they had used it as a prop or as evidence
As
in
a
a court
demo.
case. So they had to bring it into court, and it had to be disabled.
Mm-hmm.
This pistol was not even operable.
That's a stupid
So-
move. You never show up at a gunfight with
Well,
an inoperable piece
but-
of equipment.
But this is how they got charged. When they confiscated the firearm,
Yeah.
the firearm was inoperable. So they couldn't charge her with any type of firearms charge because it didn't work. So they took it into the lab, they disassembled it, reassembled it correctly so that it would fire, and then charged her with a crime.
Oh. That's not tampering with evidence.
No,
would it be?
absolutely
No,
not.
no.
That's why the state attorney general had to step in. But the idea that it was, the whole thing was a big cluster. I'm sorry, I'm on about several items this evening, and I'm worked up.
You are worked up. You,
I don't
you thought
usually
of,
get worked
you
up.
thought of like decaf or something, or What other issues have going around the state? What issues are resonating with people, or what are people asking you about the most?
Yeah, no, we ask people all the time, and I will tell you right now, the top three issues are, first of all, clean up Washington. They are tired of the corruption. They are tired of status quo and what's going on and people not being able to get along. And that's why people are really drawn to our campaign, because with my 34 years of experience working in the military, you know, whether you wear an Army, a Navy, an Air Force, a Marine, a Coast Guard uniform, whether you're male or female, whether you're Catholic or Jewish, you know, Democrat or Republican, we all took an oath to protect and defend this country because we identify as Americans first and we want to see our country succeed. And so we took this oath to protect and defend our Constitution and the citizens of this country. And we're very mission oriented. And so, you know, honestly, if 2 million people in a uniform can get together and do a common mission like that and put our differences aside, 435 people in Congress can certainly do that. And that is very appealing to the folks that I've been talking to, Democrats and Republicans. They're really tired of the infighting and this inability to get anything done for the people. You know, there is a problem solvers caucus in Congress. Did you know that?
No.
There's a caucus. It's made up, I think now it's up to maybe 56 or 58 Congress people. And there has to be equal number of Democrats and Republicans. And this caucus sits down. It's led by Tom Reed. He's a Republican from New York. And then there's Dan Muser from Pennsylvania. He's very active in this as well. And both of which who have endorsed or supported me.
Yeah.
And but then they sit down with pieces of legislation and they say, let's come to a common ground. Let's fix this legislation so it's right for America. Let's stop being so divided. You don't ever see, like I just asked you, have you ever heard of them? Nobody talks about them. But you never see on TV, there are lots of pieces. They've passed hundreds of pieces of legislation through this caucus, bipartisan, but nobody talks about it. Because that's peaceful. And if it doesn't bleed, then it's not going to lead.
Right.
And so all the dividing stuff is just making the headlines. And of course, the Democrats have been on that impeachment witch hunt that just will not end. And so...
well, don't think it's going to end after the election either.
It
This
depends.
is why
They'll-
you need
they'll
to be there to
resurrect us.
stop it.
But
that depends on who wins the House.
right. Well,
If
that depends on,
Republicans win the House,
it'll all go
impeachment
away.
will go away.
Yeah. So...
It will, but the rumblings won't.
Oh, yeah.
maybe
Well,
not,
yeah, but the media is going to keep rumbling
But
no
we
matter
need to
what.
continue down that path. So that's one thing that I've heard is just stop the corruption, stop the status quo. We've got to get, you know, when Michael Waltz, again, I'll talk about him a little bit because he was on that town hall with me. And he is a seated member of Congress, so he has a very different insight into Congress than even, you know, me or the people here in this district have because we aren't sitting in there listening to the testimony. And he said to me, you know, Lynn, we haven't had a Congress that has gotten together since our Congress got rid of so many veterans. And when veterans stopped, and that was way back in the 1970s, 74, 75, veterans stopped running for Congress. They stopped electing veterans. And so we've gone to a Congress that has very, very low percentage of veterans. But as that starts to build back up, we'll start bringing that ethos of being able to work together. And so that's why the folks that I've talked to have found us to be a very attractive campaign. Second, healthcare. And COVID launched that into the forefront. Right now, healthcare, I think, even above the economy right now. And I think it's because the economy was rolling along, you know, was steaming forward before COVID. And thank God COVID happened under this administration and not under the Obama administration because it would have been a disaster.
Well, the thing is, because you can speak to that. Under Obama, I forget what it was, not Spanish flu. What was the flu they had?
H1N1.
H1N1.
Okay,
but we
so-
also had Ebola.
Okay, so well, yeah, but H1N1, my understanding is 1,000 Americans died before Obama even decided to do anything about it.
Right.
Right,
But
so
over 60 million were infected.
so why is, I guess it's a more rhetorical question, but why do they completely assault Donald Trump over his handling when as soon as it was clear that it was here, he shut down airlines from China? And Obama waited till there was almost 1,000 people that were dead or infected.
Probably dead.
I think dead before he did anything. Why is there
I don't know the why on that, other than it's an election year and people hate, the folks that are in Congress that are in power hate Donald Trump. I mean, why did they try to impeach him over and over and over and over and over again for a crime that didn't happen? Doctor friend of mine calls COVID a virus with a publicist, and and so. I think it just, it was a great opportunity to vilify our president again. And, but getting back to the district and the people here, talking about COVID and healthcare, they are ready for a healthcare plan that, and it's not a government-run, one-size-fits-all, minimum essential coverage is your standard healthcare plan, right? Folks are wanting to have affordable, accessible, and quality care, and they know that it's going to take a candidate like me with, oh, by the way, I am the only federal candidate, Senate, Democrat, Republican, CD1, CD2, only candidate that's got any healthcare experience. And I have 34 years of healthcare delivery, healthcare law, healthcare legislation, and healthcare
yeah, but you got
policy
the unique
development.
ability because you were organizing a lot of that while you were in the military also.
Oh, sure. I've done this. I'm lucky because I get to be what I consider twice a citizen, right? Monday through Friday, I'm a civilian. I got to work in the State House. I felt very fortunate that I got to, while I was serving and got deployed, got to serve my state and my nation simultaneously. But as a reservist, on the weekends, I'm a warrior, and during the week, I have a civilian job. And both of those have always been rooted in healthcare, whether, like I said, healthcare legislation when I was in the State House, or healthcare law when I worked in healthcare law, or healthcare policy when I was on active duty at the Pentagon. But healthcare is a huge issue, and we've got to get to a place where we can have healthcare reform, where people can purchase their insurance across state lines, where we have transparency in pricing so you don't get those surprise bills anymore, where we have tort reform so doctors aren't practicing defensive medicine, which doesn't equal quality medicine, and so that we can get control of the out-of-control pricing when it comes to pharmaceuticals, which brings me to COVID and that whole COVID nightmare. And we learned that China had such control over our pharmaceutical industry and our medical devices and our protective equipment and our toilet paper. And so getting access to that, and how we have to bring manufacturing back. And it's funny, when you go across the state, when you're up in the North Country, manufacturing is very, very important. Did you guys know that we have a company up in Colebrook? It's called American Precision Polymers, and they make latex gloves. Well, they're not latex, they're nitrile, but they make nitrile.
Nitrile's actually better. It doesn't make my hands itchy.
Right, because a lot of people have latex allergy. But they make these nitrile gloves. And so we have been manufacturing many ready medical devices here. There's also a place in Litchfield that is called Small Tube, and they make all the needles for the syringes for when we give injections or when we draw blood. And so anyway, this company up there just got a big DoD expansion, because we want to bring making nitrile gloves back to the United States exclusively, or at least primarily, so that we never get into that deficit again. And so they're expanding up there, which is great news for Colebrook. And we've got to continue that manufacturing up there. And then, so we talked about healthcare, we talked about cleaning up Washington, and right now education is on everybody's mind, because the kids want to go back to school. The kids who go to school want to go back to school. And I've asked 5-year-olds all the way up to high schoolers, why do you want to go back to school? And it's either, I want to play on the sports team, or I want to continue in the band, or I miss my friends, or I want my teacher.
It's
right?
all of it, yeah.
My son is a senior this year, and he spent the last half of last year fully remote, and he spent all summer saying, I want to go back to school. I need to go back to school. Mm-hmm. And luckily he's going to a particular school that they are going to be in person full
So is
time.
he going to a private school?
He is.
Well, and see, and I applaud you, and I appreciate that you have the ability to do that. But our kids in this community whose parents don't have the money to send them to private school, well, guess what? You're remote learning. And what's even sadder is if you live in a place that has terrible internet, well, then, what the teacher's answer to that is, we're going to bring you worksheets.
Well, absolutely. There's all kinds of reasons.
And so
that make it horrible to work from home for these kids.
Well, and if you're a 5 or a 6-year-old, a kindergartner or a first grader, and you're learning to read, and you don't have great internet at home, and your mom and dad need to go back to work, and the teacher's going to bring you a worksheet, who's going to teach you how to read it?
Right.
And so that isn't a workable solution. And I really worry about our middle schoolers, because our middle schoolers, those are the ones that are most at risk for cyberbullying and for online predators. And if they're sitting in front of a computer all day with no monitoring, they are ripe for being preyed upon. And I worry about that.
You've got teachers' unions and school districts across the country who are actually sending out forms to the parents of these students. And the parents are being forced to sign a statement saying that they will not monitor their students during school time. Meaning, the teachers don't want you as a parent to see or hear how or what they're teaching your children. These forms are being sent out to
New
parents.
Hampshire?
I don't think so in New Hampshire, but across the country is that type of thing. So you've got not only the teachers not want to go back to work.
Whoa. I don't think it's teachers.
No, it's the unions.
Maybe the unions, but the majority of teachers that I know want to go back to work.
I haven't seen that. But you've got the schools sending out these forms saying you need to stay away from your child during school hours because we don't want you monitoring how we're teaching your children. That's one. Well, let's start with that one.
Well, and I can't answer that because I've not seen that, and I don't know, and that would be terrible if that's the case. I don't know why you'd want your students sitting home all day with nobody monitoring them. That doesn't sound like a good plan to me, especially if it's a young child who needs monitoring. And children, now my experience has been from my friends whose children were doing the online learning, that there were just a particular block of time in the morning, maybe 1 or 2 hours, and on Monday, Wednesday, Friday or something, where you would log into Zoom and you would have a Zoom classroom with the teacher, and then you were on your own for the rest of the time during the day. So there wasn't a continual interaction where they were sitting in front of the computer getting instruction from that teacher.
And that can't. There's no solution to that, right?
No.
There's no way that teachers of 30 student classrooms, because that's kind of the average now across the country. You get about between 25 and 30 students per classroom. There's no way a teacher can handle that and keep coming back all day with every student.
Well,
you have to be in a classroom together.
and I had teacher friends of mine who said that there were some students that just didn't check in, and there's no way to check in on them, but they worried about those students because they may be in an at-risk home or something like that, and it was very hard, and trying to send a truant officer to the home was very difficult. So there's a lot of growing pains, and there's certainly a lot of areas for failure in this situation. We can contain the virus. We have seen you can contain the virus, right? We can see that we can contain the spread of the virus. And so students going back to school, whether it's, good sanitation, which we should have been doing anyway. I mean, there's other viruses out there. There's the flu. There's norovirus, and nobody wants norovirus. That's the stomach virus. So if you get that one's awful. There's colds. Do you guys remember?
I think more people are actually currently dying from pneumonia than COVID-19.
Well, there's all kinds of viruses out there. And then my daughter was in high school when MRSA was really bad. MRSA is a bacteria. It's a skin infection that can be deadly, and the second thing in MRSA is the R, is resistant, because it's resistant to antibiotics.
Right.
And so it is a terrible organism. It's, it's awful, and it makes people very sick, and it is deadly. And I remember when my daughter was in high school, it was going around the high school. And, they didn't shut the school down. They didn't send the kids home. MRSA was a horrible thing. But what they did do was tell the parents, you need to disinfect your children's athletic equipment. Make sure your children wear shoes in the flip-flops in the showers at the school. They did a better job sanitizing. They had the kids using hand sanitizer and don't touch each other, and that sort of stuff. And they were able to contain it. And MRSA came and went, and it wasn't it didn't linger forever. And so there are ways to disinfect, to make sure that the kids understand that if you're sick, don't go to school. We now know if you're sick, you don't have to go to work. Many people are set up to work from home. We have Zoom. So maybe you should go to the office most of the time or go to school most of the time. But if you have a fever or a runny nose or whatever.
I have absolutely no problem doing it part-time.
Yeah. But if you're sick, don't go to school. If you're sick, don't go to work. And that should have been, that is not COVID specific. That is any illness.
But that might work well in the white collar world. You try telling your boss, so I got the sniffles, I'm not going in. When you're working in a machine shop,
Sure, if
you
you're a
don't
car
keep
mechanic.
your job very long.
No.
So there's a reality in the blue collar world that is just not.
No,
you go unless you're dead, you don't go. You still go.
And that's up to each machine, especially if you're in a machine shop or whatever, and you're in a contained environment where you're not, infecting large groups of people. I, as a nurse, if I have a fever, I shouldn't be taking care of patients. Most of my
Correct.
patients
Yes.
are in the hospital because they're compromised already. And so that wouldn't be a good environment.
Right.
And that is a hands-on job. And that is something I can't do from home. And you're right. When people are sick in the hospital, what happens if your nurses and doctors get sick and can't come to work? Then you end up with a high acuity of patients with a low number of staff to take care of them. And it does create some problems. But as a general rule, where, and when we're talking about kids in school, that's an important issue to folks all the way up and down, especially up in the North Country where their internet isn't, they don't have broadband for everybody up there. And so, and then, of course, national security. Now that we've seen what happened with China, we know from a national security perspective that our 4 biggest enemies are going to be Russia and Iran and North Korea and China.
Right.
And I think our president has done a really good job drawing that hard line in the sand. We, under the 2018 National Defense Strategy, are going to be a competent force that is going to be a strong deterrent, giving us the advantage to win. And we're doing that through weaponry, through building allies, and recognizing who our adversaries are. But China has proven to be an adversary, not just from cyber and intellectual property, but from withholding information from us. And look at what happened to our country. I said in 2013 when I was at the Pentagon, we were doing tabletop drills on these types of crises in our country. I said back then, if you want to wipe out America, drop a respiratory virus in the ventilatory system of New York City and we'll be crippled in 3 days. I wish I never said that out loud.
Wow.
But you can see how it can happen.
Now, you say that, because that's what was confusing to me. Well, not confusing. I think I understood it, but New York is one of the few places that got hit super hard, right? I mean, I think there's 30,000 people dead or something like that. Is it the ventilation system in the subways and stuff like that just keeps circulating the virus?
There were a lot of factors. It's a very crowded city, right? There just were a lot of factors. And when we get all the data on what happened in New York City, we'll find out. But it's a very transient place with 2 major airports where people fly internationally all the time. So you had people coming from other countries that weren't being screened, and we didn't know, there's, if there were folks from China who were infected, don't know how it got in there like it did. And then, just as you described, we had close quarters of poorly ventilated systems where people were able to not only come in contact, but also breathe in the air for people very close
together.
It's a very
big conundrum for environmentalists who advocate public transportation, right? All of a sudden, public transportation, in these cities where public transportation is accepted and is pretty much the norm, public transportation ended up being the catalyst
One of the
for
biggest
spreading
deficits.
these things,
Yeah.
right?
Well-
Buses, subways, taxis, and those of us who go everywhere in our own gas-guzzling trucks,
Yeah.
we've been safe so far.
Right.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that was pretty. I can't say funny because I shouldn't.
Oh.
But that was because
we switched from plastic back to paper.
that was the other one. There was a lot of stuff the green people were trying to push
Plastic
down our
grocery
throats.
bags are and the reusable grocery bags. Oh, those
You
are
gotta
big.
wash
Yeah, you
those,
can't use reusable
Well,
grocery
and
bags anymore.
There's been a
So
lot
all
of
these things
inconsistency.
we've been trained. We're now back
Right.
to
You can go to church. I mean, you can go riot and you can go to a bar, but you can't go to church, right?
That is something I
Oh, you know why? It's because bars, and churches, and other peaceful assembly areas, That's where conservatives go to talk to each other. And the liberals can't have us talking to each other anytime before the election.
Yeah.
Well, I might take my Bible to the to the next place if that's the only place I'm going to get my religion.
Well, there's a few churches down south that have started to hold their sermons in Walmart.
Oh,
Because it's okay to go to Walmart,
Yeah.
but it's not okay to go to church.
Yeah, I think that underlies or exposes what the reality is, and actually what the reality of a lot of the problems around the country right now is when you have governors around the country who somehow decided that religious services were non-essential.
But liquor stores are.
Well, yes, the contrast is pretty stunning, but it fundamentally showed that they really have no idea what faith in God is, or what Christianity is, and what faith, how much people rely on their faith to get them through and to be good citizens. Because if once they say that it's non-essential, that means that they don't understand the Constitution, because it's one of the few things that's guaranteed.
Right.
Absolutely guaranteed, and it's not unessential. It's one of the most essential things you can be involved
The reason
in.
why it's number one on the list of amendments.
Number one,
Right, number
number
one.
one, freedom of religion, and yet
Right.
that's one of the first things they cut out, and it's staggering how.
But I applaud the churches that, my particular church, they did a great job. They put up a big tent outside, and they spread out the chairs so people who wanted to come and worship fit within the guidelines. And then they live streamed, and people could sit in their cars in the parking lot and live stream it through the radio or whatever they were doing in the car. And then you could live stream it at home too. And so our church was, bound, set, and determined that they were going to stay connected to their congregation, because we know in a time of crisis you need things other than a shot of bourbon. You need your spiritual.
It's absolutely essential. We saw a lot of mental health crises taking place
Absolutely.
during this period of time.
Go through the roof. Relapses went through the roof.
Churches and any type of help center or help groups, AA, any type of support group, those were all shut down, and we saw a lot of that happening. In fact, I have a friend who's a police officer for one of the New York tunnel authorities, and he and his team have had to stop multiple, in the dozens of jumpers, right? And some of them they didn't get to in time. And these are all people that were doing fine. We find out after the fact in the news stories that they were doing fine, but their biggest problem at that particular moment was they weren't able to get
help.
in contact with their known support system that they had been relying on for years.
We only have a second or two, but
Okay.
But I want to recap that a little bit. So what happened is the governor decided, and a lot of governors around the country decided, that church was no longer essential. As soon as he did that, that shut off all of the Alcoholics Anonymous meetings in the state. Because, most of them, I should say, because I don't know all of them, are in church basements.
That process is
So
based
you
in a Christian methodology.
Yeah, it's all, that's what it is. It's helping each other, helping the community. And so you had people in the congregation who were maybe having a tough time anyway, and now they don't have access to other people in the congregation to talk to. You have people that were in Alcoholics Anonymous. Maybe they were just getting sober. Maybe they just needed to get sober, and the meetings are all done. And the relapse rate went up, the suicide rate went up, the drug addiction went up. And so yes, we probably saved some lives from COVID, but I'm not sure in the total we saved any lives. But I love you, Lynn. I am voting for you. I
Thank
need
you.
one of your signs so I can hold it on primary day.
Thank you.
How
for
can
doing-
people
3rd.
September 3rd?
No, September 8th.
Oh, sorry,
eight,
September
September
8th.
September
I
8th.
got something else going on September 3rd. Sorry.
So how can people get in touch with Lynne Blankenbeker and help her out and get some signs up?
Thanks for that. Yeah, we're at blankenbeker.com, BLANKENBEKER, no C's. We have enough C's already. So Blankenbeker.com. Jump on there. You can sign up to help in any way. Like I said, we've got a really aggressive program going, and so we will take phone bankers, we will take door knockers, we will take sign holders, we will take checks if folks want to continue to help us get our message out, because that's, another way we can get our message out is by mailing.
Do
and-
you have an office for people to do phone banks, or yes or no?
No, we don't have an office. People can do it right off Red Dialer on their own phone. And then the nice thing about that is we have a blocked phone number, so they can't see the individual's phone, and so they can call right off a Red Dialer. It's really easy, and we give a script, and it's super easy. People can do it in their bunny slippers from their living room. But if they want to come to my house, they can do
They
calls
have to
with
do
me.
it in bunny slippers? Can they do it in regular loafers? Or
You could do it in whatever you want.
Lynn, I love
Gary,
you.
thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you.